So Microsoft Develop was actually a program acquired from Nokia. So my first job when I got out here was as an intern for Nokia. I didn't work on the Develop program when I first got there. I was in charge of merchandising on the Windows Phone store, which meant I was actually, if you went on a Windows Phone back in 13 and you were in the United States and you looked at all the apps that were on the Windows Phone store, I was the one who was responsible for putting those apps in those places. I did a pretty good job at that, and opening on the develop team came around, and that team was really like had this wild idea for the time, which was an application development platform that was gamified. And so we would teach people how to make an app and then make it successful just through simple challenges and games. And then we would give people, anytime you completed one of the challenges, you'd get some points. And then you could, it was kind of like a carnival or like an arcade game back in the day where you get like the tickets. So you get all your points, and then you can go to our store and buy all sorts of Nokia products, and then later on Microsoft products.
Interesting.
So it was like a really good way to, like, if you couldn't afford like the flagship phone, you could go get one, or you could get a development kit. You're like, oh, I really want to learn how to, make apps for, the Nokia Lumia, 1020 or whatever. I can
Right.
go buy one now with my points. That program was so successful that at its peak, 75% of all the Windows Phone apps in existence had gone through that program. And so it was like really highly sought after when Microsoft acquired Nokia. Microsoft more or less laid off the great majority of Nokia employees and kind of just like shuttered the company, that piece of the company. Nokia still exists. They only
Right.
sold off a piece of the company to Microsoft. My team and about 100 other people from across the US were actually integrated into Microsoft, and Microsoft really wanted that product. They were seeing it as like, and at that time, it was like an app race, like how many apps each platform had. And it was like, Apple Store had like 100,000 apps, and the Android Store had, because it was more like 300,000 apps. And then Windows Phone was like 20,000, like, because they kind of fumbled it away a few times. And so to catch up, they decided we'll acquire Nokia, and they're trying to get us to help sort of boost up the apps. The problem that we had found was that we had a system that created apps really, really well. It incentivized people to create an app. The problem was that they would only create an app up to a certain point, get stuck, and then start over.
Right.
And so what they were basically creating was a bunch of junky, non-usable apps. I called it a crap generating system. And we came in, like, there were some apps that were really, really good that came out of this, but the great majority were just nothing, non-usable. And so my job when I came into that team was like, fix this problem. And so I essentially I completely tore up the script and made the game all over again. And if you have played Fortnite or anything like that, where it has like the leveling system with the battle pass, you get like certain rewards at certain stages. And I actually before this even came out, that's exactly what I devised for Develop, was essentially like, if you get to level 10, you get, X number of points, or you get a phone or whatever, right? And it was just designed to get people, instead of like, I get to a point and then stop and then start over, it's to take it like, no, you should learn more at this step, because, at this step, you're going to get this really, this big bucket of points, or, a cool phone or something, and start to just slowly pull people down the line further and further, so that they are maturing the apps that they started building, that they wanted to build something that's more polished. So like the end game was to get them to a polished state. Right. So like the whole idea, yeah. And so we did that for a bit, and that worked out a little bit, but then we realized that now we needed to teach these people how to make businesses, because we realized that, well, they make an app, but now they don't know how to make money off the app. Now what we're asking them to do is like really complicated and technical, and it's going to take them time. And there needs to be like an actual monetary reward, not a phone. They're like, at some point I'm going to do so much work. I'm like, I don't want a phone anymore. I want to be able to buy my own phone and pay my rent. And
Right.
so we had to then tear that system up and rebuild it again, which got them to focus on downloads, app rating, and one more thing. And I can't remember what it was at this point, because we never got to that point. We never built it. You could get app ratings. We taught people how to do that. That was the only pillar that was actually built. The other two, we never got built. Oh, the third one was revenue.
Right.
Yeah. So that was the first one we built, because I proposed the system, and the Microsoft people were like, well, if this doesn't work, you've torn up like the system that does work, and you started all over. So you need to prove it. What we did was we started this whole challenge of just focus on app reviews and teach people how to get good reviews, how to incentivize better reviews, all these things that you kind of have to do as a business, an app business. And it raised app review scores by something like over 100%. It was crazy by just following these little changes to like your behavior and how you do something instead of just like randomly asking somebody. Well, the first thing was nobody was asking. We're like, just put in this one line of code that after, X number of uses, for when they open it, it pops up and says, like you see on like app stores now, where it's like, are you enjoying this app? Nobody on Windows Phone was doing that. No one was asking anybody about just give me a rating. And then the next one was like, if you get a bad rating, instead of like it directly submitting to the store, have it push it to like, oh, can you write me feedback instead? And then don't let it submit because you don't want because then you want it A, you want feedback, but B, you also don't want that bad score because what we also found is like once you started getting bad scores, like it just like piles on and then it's really hard to get out of a bad score cycle. So you kind of did want, feedback on some level. So we got people to focus on it, like drove up the scores. And then that's when, like I was explaining, that's when we were taken from our home here in the Bay Area and we were moved up to Redmond. And that's when we learned that not only like we thought we were the only ones building this thing within Microsoft because we were the ones that were brought over, like, oh, well, they really want us. And so we'll have like our, lay of the land. We do whatever we want. We show up, there's 4 or 5 other teams that are building almost identical products. And we were like, oh, this is great. Look how many people we're going to have rolled up underneath us. Like, we're going to really like drive this. I thought I was going to be at Microsoft for the next like 10, 15 years building this product.
Right.
And so I was super excited. And then like maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm like, why are all these teams like, we never meet them? Like, what's going on? And they're like, oh no, like our boss came in like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, we're in competition with them. This is not a collaborative environment. It's a competitive environment. And so we have to build the best product better than them. And whoever wins, wins. And it's just turned like from that point, the whole, the game board was flipped over basically. And it was like chaos then reigned in our product. And it just got slowly ripped up over time. People left and they didn't want to work on it anymore because it was just like, it's so political. It was so cutthroat.
Right.
It just got to a point where you're like, I don't want to work here anymore. Like, this isn't fun to build something when I can't even trust one of the, another team in Microsoft that, hey, help me out, like figure out this problem. Hey, let's work together to solve it. It's more like, no, if I go to them and I tell them what problem I'm trying to work on, they'll try to sabotage me and then they'll take my idea and put it into theirs.
So you can
You don't want to work with them. You're like, so you start to
collaborate.
silo yourself back off. And I'm like, and if you ever use Microsoft products, that's why, at least at that time, that's why a lot of those products never really worked out well, is because personally, I don't believe that that's a really good way to build great product. It's actually a great way to build a lot of bad products.